Hello. Hello. Welcome. Welcome, Bitcoiners, traders, followers, supporters, haters, those burning the midnight oil or late night oil. I know it depends on where you are in the world at this particular moment, but for me, it's close to 11 p.m. Eastern time, I should say. For some of you, I know it might be early in the morning, um, or maybe your time is similar to mine, but I wanted to actually quickly do a Q&A session somewhat as a test to test out this time of the 24-hour day cycle. I used to actually, a number of years ago, I used to participate on a platform called Periscope. Now, some of you who follow me today may remember those days. And my favorite time to go live on the Periscope platform was like around midnight. And I would have these midnight fire chats, I call them. And they got quite popular. I had as many as 24,000 followers at the time. This is going back, oh, wow. It's got to be more than, man, I can't remember even the year, but we're going way back. 2016, 2015, maybe? Something along those lines. But, anyways, most people know Periscope was bought out by Twitter, and they actually do have it embedded into their overall platform at x.com. That's what I typically use to primarily go live with you via video form. But anyway, just sort of using the opportunity to get some questions answered and also to test out this time in the 24-hour cycle as well. I'm assuming that it will not be as, I guess, as attractive, but I think that in due time, I can pretty much make any time attractive as long as it's consistent. I can't really at this particular point schedule these things, and I know that would be the best so people can plan around them, especially those people who prefer to participate live during the sessions for whatever reason. But um, I can't do that at this particular point. But I think that that is something that I have planned a little deeper into the year. Now, I plan to do these sessions and be relatively active on X.com all the way. I promised myself all the way to when Bitcoin reaches 100,000. This is something that is not sustainable for me. I have too much travel, too many things going on, and too many things unchecked on my bucket list to be sitting here and spending a decent portion of my day making sure that certain responses are responded to. But I do want you to know that this is the only platform that I actually run and control 100% myself, which means that if you get a response from me, it is directly from me. That is not the case with any other platform. On YouTube, I have, I don't know, close to 320,000 subscribers. I'm just not there. I'm not the one responding to you there, but I am the one responding to you here, every single post, or what have you. Um, and so this is the one I'm planning to do exclusively myself, at least until Bitcoin reaches $100,000 from a U.S. dollar perspective. But I wanted to take this opportunity. I've got a little bit of time here to take any of your questions. I'm not quite sure if anybody has any questions, but um, while I'm waiting for those, I am going to take some that sort of came through on certain posts of mine. Uh, as I'm sure you quite can imagine, because the spot Bitcoin ETFs, probably one of the hottest topics in the financial world today, most of the comments or questions are connected to that. And I'm perfectly happy to keep hammering away on that. What I found is that I sort of sense sometimes that I have to go down this path of providing business 101 classes on accounting procedures and tax consequences and things of that nature. But regarding the GBTC exemptions, what I'm finding, the gist of people that I believe don't really get what I'm trying to say, that Grayscale has anticipated a certain degree of redemptions. They're okay with that, that they were going to get those redemptions irrespective of what their fee was. What a lot of people don't, what I'm finding that a lot of people who have pushed back on that notion, what they're missing, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, guys, it's the only thing I have, right? In my opinion, what they're missing is the fact that GBTC was largely an institutional product. You see, most of these people that I believe are commenting to me, they are mired in the retail world. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, most individuals in the world are considered retail. They don't have a familiarity with the institutional space. They don't even really, many of them don't understand or recognize that GBTC was largely built as a product for the institutional space. I mean, you largely had to be an accredited investor to be truly involved. It was a vehicle that sophisticated market players that played off of GBTC's premium largely use the entity for. And this is not your typical, crypto bro that was at GBTC over the last 10 years. These were the ARK Invest companies. These were many of your trading houses, which were basically getting BTC, depositing the BTC uh, uh, in the GBTC entity, and primarily working with the shares to take advantage of the arbitrage between the premium of the GBTC shares and um, what you would get by depositing BTC there. So it was a vehicle that was largely utilized by very sophisticated players, not your average Joe on the street. And so I think a lot of people miss that. And these players, right? These players, many of them are funds, many of them are money management organizations that are responsible for other investors. And other investors are not very happy about the fund making a move that that forces upon them a, an unexpected, unwanted 20% plus tax consequence in their life right now to save 1%. Like, I would be out to fire. I would be out to sue. I would be out to fire anybody who did that to me. And what I believe that, and that's really all you'd probably save. You're looking that these people don't understand that nobody's going to shuffle around several $billion that has high cost connected to the move and a 20% plus consequence, tax consequence that's immediate, to save a net 1% that is paid over an entire year. It's just not going to happen when you're talking about big money. So these people who I think don't see this point are largely focused on a retail mindset. The person with a couple $1,000 in a 401k plan or an IRA or crypto bro, that's not what GBTC existed for. And so there are two groups of players that are largely responsible for the vast majority of the expected redemptions in GBTC right now. The group number one, your tax deferred funds, the funds that basically have no tax consequences for getting out. They were just basically waiting for the approval to have a way to exit. All right. And they were waiting for, and this ties into the second group, they were waiting for the discount that had gotten as deep as 48, negative 48%. They were waiting for that discount to be narrowed, which certainly was going to be the case upon approval. And now they can exit. If they had exited before without a tax consequence, these tax deferred entities, then they would have taken the discount hit. But they knew that if Grayscale did get, in fact, approved, that discount would be completely narrowed. And at that point, they would exit. And so you got these two groups, the discount to parity players. I was one of them. We played them. We played this arbitrage. We played this. This is potentially going to parity. I didn't get it at negative 48%, but I got it at negative 42%. And so my traders and I played this discount to parity play, and we're out of it, of course. So that's group number one, the discount to parity players. They don't care about exiting. It was a trade. That was the trade. It's done. That's part of their business to trade. Boom, you're out. All right. Then there's the other group, the tax deferred group, that wanted that discount to be narrowed too. And upon it being narrowed after the approval, they don't have a tax consequence to move to another entity with a lower fee. Now, if I know this, Grayscale knows this better. They know their clientele. They know what type of players are involved. They worked with them closely. They know who's tax deferred and who's not. They know who's a trading operation and who's not. They know every single major player that had put funds or Bitcoin in the GBTC. They know them all quite intimately. This is not something that is not expected by GBTC. They may leave a bad taste in my mouth because of the way they conduct their business and many of the decisions that they've made. I'm not a fan of them, as I mentioned, but what I have to admit is that these are no stupid people, and they have a cash cow that would be the crowning jewel of any other financial organization. Everybody would love to have that business. And trust me, they're not making a stupid move. This is not a stupid move. This marginal drop was to save face, to show people that, all right, we'll come off of what we did. We don't want to put it in your face that bad, but I don't even think they really needed to come down off of the 2%. No one is going, no one with multiple billions of dollars there. Now remember, they had $30 billion in AUM, right? Which means that their clients with billions of dollars there, no one's with billions of dollars going to take a 20% hit. I'm telling you, to save 1%, it's not going to happen. And so I think that a lot of the people who are commenting here are largely, they only know retail, and they have no concept that this is an institutional product. It was created to give institutions access to Bitcoin that did not have the right or the regulatory framework to actually custody Bitcoin themselves, nor did they have the desire to custody Bitcoin themselves, but they wanted some type of Bitcoin exposure. And so that's what I think is largely missing here. And so I sort of got tired of trying to give business 101 lessons here and thought that maybe just coming online live and verbally saying that was better than just kind of retyping it 150 times. All right. North Star says, Oliver, what are you most excited about over the next 2 years, BTC or not? I'm the most excited about Bitcoin. Guys, there is nothing in the universe that I believe is more exciting than Bitcoin right now, in my opinion. We're living through history. These are very exciting times. It is not the time to be flippant and to look at these things in a very cursory way. I believe that we are very special. We are very unique. And this period of time, which you're living through right now, what is in your face every single day right now, is making history and will be talked about and written about and maybe downloaded on chips in your brain at some point in the future for many, many, many years to come. Um, I today talk about my experience with the same thing that happened with the gold ETF. There was a great deal of hype and anticipation regarding the gold ETF approval. Other countries had already approved and had spot gold ETFs. There was the same talk, the same conspiracy theories around gold at the time, that America was never going to approve it because they had the world reserve currency and this and that. And I was a gold bug the vast majority of my life. And I just remember all of the same things I hear today. I heard this time in anticipation of the possible approval of Bitcoin ETF, how the US government was never going to approve it, that it's a threat to the system and the world reserve currency. It's literally like I went all the way back to the early 2000s. And I tell the story today about how the approval finally came at the end of 2004, and how at the time I had thousands of traders with me that followed me into GLD. Um, that first USD, United States based spot gold ETF in January of 2005, and how we rode that for 8+ years, with virtually only one small interruption during the crash of 2008. If you go back to some of my old posts on Facebook, you will find me pounding the table on gold and silver in particular. And we had an amazing 8-year run, but I tell the story to people, and some of my traders are still with me from that period, where um, we piled in 2005 and continued to accumulate, understanding that it would take several months before this starts to have a material impact on the underlying asset. You see, we knew that you don't expect the underlying asset to have an initial reaction upon an approval. That's ridiculous. How? Like, how does the underlying asset have some impact if it's just an approval? There's a lot that has to happen after you're approved to do something. If I approve you to go to, if I approve you once and for all and give you a passport, and this is the first time you're able to travel to Europe, that doesn't affect Europe. That doesn't affect your experience. You've just been approved to go to Europe. There's nothing that's happened yet. All right. And so, we understood this back in the day, but today it's very unique in that people expected this to have a material impact on the price right away. Now, I've always told you that it is going to have a material impact, but everything takes about 6 to 9 months to actually get itself worked through the system. You don't turn something big like this just upon a freaking approval. And so we won't see material effect and a material effect on the underlying asset regarding these ETFs until later this year. And I'm going to give you the time or the general period that you will start to see this. All right. Mark this down, mark my word, around presidential election time. So US presidential election time is early November. So you give me 30 days before to 30 days after election. Give me that period and watch this thing frickin' start moving in relationship to what is happening right now. What is happening right now is affecting October, November, December in front of us. What is happening now is not affecting now, it's affecting October, November, December. So there's this old saying. I used to be an avid Ralph Waldo Emerson reader, fan, much younger in my life. And there's this I think there was this line, I can't remember it word for word, but it's in one of my favorite essays by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Compensation. And if you haven't read that, I actually strongly encourage you to do so. I think it's a must read for every human being on the planet, to be honest with you. It's very short, but it's very powerful. Ralph Waldo Emerson, it's called Compensation. And in this essay, there's a line that says, the universe is connected. And whenever it's so connected that what many people don't realize is that every time you pluck a daisy, like a daisy, a flower, every time you pluck a daisy, you twinkle a star in the outer universe. And that is the way this is working. The daisies are being plucked right now by the Black Rocks, by the Fidelities, by the Bitwises. The daisies are being plucked right now. There's a delayed effect that you will ultimately see far in the sky, and it's bigger than the actual plucking of the daisy. You're actually going to ultimately twinkle a star. Do you know how much more enormous a star is than a daisy out in the outer universe? You'll have to look up and see it in all of its glory, and you can affect a massive star by plucking a daisy right now. And what's happening right now is that these ETFs are plucking daisies. And we're going to look up into the sky October, November, December of this year, and we're going to be like, oh my goodness, look at all of these stars twinkling. Hold me to it. Mark my word. Write this down. Save this live session, because I want to be able to tell you, I told you so. Now, I want you to understand, I've mentioned this to you many times. I'm not above telling you I told you so. I will do it. I'm going to tell you I told you so. I'm never going to shut up about it. You are going to get tired of me saying I told you so. You know why? Because I'm petty like that. That's just me. I'm petty. All right. We'll see. We'll see. All right. North Star, this is a really interesting question. Do you ever feel, Oliver, like you have stacked enough? How do you decide between living well and stacking harder? So, this is a really fascinating question, and one that I could spend an inordinate amount of time actually talking about, which I'll try not to do here. It's not the format for this. But um, I don't, this is very similar to asking this question: is there ever enough freedom? And the answer is no. So, because I truly view and know, not just view, I know Bitcoin is freedom, then there is never enough. And so, from that perspective, the answer is no. Now, think of it this way: as long as I am forced to earn, to earn the fruits of my labor in the form of a government coupon that is not controlled by me, that is really not mine, that is manipulated, and the price of which is determined by someone else, and that is perpetually debased on me, which means that the longer I hold it, the less valuable it becomes. As long as I am coerced to earn the fruits of my labor by receiving that, I will move it into Bitcoin. You see, once you recognize that something is better than what you're getting, you switch what you're getting into what is better. That's just common sense. Most people haven't reached the point where they see Bitcoin as better than the piece of the coupon that they're receiving from their government. But once that switch happens and you realize, by no choice of my own, I have to earn this piece of crap. And as long as I have the ability to almost instantly move it to something far superior, something that will not debase on me, something that is mathematically guaranteed to go up every 4 years of its existence, something that is not in the control of any human being, yet is available to every single human being on earth, something that is secure, that cannot be stolen, that cannot be confiscated, that is totally in my possession. And as long as I have the ability, as long as I'm forced to earn the inferior, I will move it into the superior. So at what point is it okay to just say, no, I'll just accept the inferior thing that wastes my life away? Never, never is there a point to stop that. So no, I don't feel like I have enough. But what's also inherent in that question is the premise or the assumption that there should be a goal. See, I don't have a numerical goal, and I don't think you should have one either. Like, I want to get to X number of Bitcoin. No, I think that's wrong. I think you should adopt what I have adopted. As long as you give me junk for my work, I am going to move it into Bitcoin until I no longer am forced to receive this piece of junk. And that's it. And I'm going to do it forever. It doesn't matter what the US denominated price of the superior thing is. If you give me junk for my work, for my labor, for my time, for my knowledge, for my skill, if that's what you're going to give me in exchange for my life, I'm going to move it into something far better than that. And I will do it until the day I die. So I don't have a specific number that upon which I start relaxing afterwards. Now, what I will also say about this is that I do believe that this should not stop you from living your life. And this does largely depend upon where you are in your overall life cycle, right? So I'm maybe beyond many who are listening to me today in my life cycle. I'm almost 60 years old. I'm 58 years old. I'll be 58 years old next month. So that's a different part of my cycle. And living a quality life and not needing anything and being able to do anything I want on planet Earth is important to me. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was in I was in sixth grade. My sixth grade teacher, her name was Miss Nardiello. She sent the class over the weekend home with an assignment. And the assignment for the entire classroom was to come back on Monday morning with our definition of what successful means. And so it was something like success week or something like that. And we were supposed to come back with our own personal definition of what success was. And I thought this was going to be rather simple, but when I went home over the weekend and started thinking about it, I realized how difficult answering that question was. So I sat down and I began to look around me and I said, none of my neighbors are successful. I mean, I started with this premise of who do I want to be? And this question made me think that way. Who do I want to be in my life? And I said, well, I love my parents, but that's not really, I want to be beyond my parents. My parents weren't extraordinarily wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, right? So, or successful. I mean, they were decent people. They managed to put me through the best schools. And And I appreciate that. But super, super successful, no. So I'm like, it's not my parents. It's not any of my relatives I can think of. It's not anybody I live around. And I realized that I didn't really actually know. And so I believe it was that Sunday before I had to come in with my answer. I, re- I had a flashback of my mother who promised me this special skateboard if I got all A's in class. And I got all A's, and Christmas came around, and all I wanted was this skateboard. And I rushed to the Christmas tree, and I just remember ripping all the the few presents, the wrapping off the presents, and my mom, I could sense her looking at me, and I know she knew what I was looking for. And when I had opened everything and realized that it wasn't there, I looked at my mom, and my mom had a tear in her eye. And she said, Oliver, I did everything I could. I just couldn't get it. And I said, Mom, it's okay. I like these things. And then I knew I had my answer to what is my definition of success. That Monday morning, when it was my turn to stand up next to my desk and give my answer, as some people were saying, well, you know, success is having a Ferrari, success is having a big giant mansion, success is da 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 da. Mr. Velez, what is success for you? I stood up, cleared my throat, and clearly said, Ms. Nardiello, success to me is never having to say no when you really want to say yes. And this comment to Miss Nardiello sort of blew her away. I could see it in her face. And she said, what, Oliver? Can you repeat that to me? And I said, yes. Success to me is never having to say no when you really want to say yes. And she said, that is very insightful, Mr. Velez. You can sit down. And so I tell you that story to connect it to how I've tried to live my life and how I have taught anyone who wants to listen to me how to shape how I believe one should shape their life. I've taught this to my children. You want your nose to be real. You don't want your nose in life to be false, right? So I don't want to say no because I have to. I want to say no because I don't want to. That to me is living free. That to me is being independent. You see, my mother had to tell me no to the skateboard. But in her heart and in her soul, she really wanted to say yes. And that is what I never wanted to have to do in my life because I saw that tear in my mother's eye. And so I've tried to live my life that way. And so I tell you that story. I'm sorry for being winded. I tell you that story to come all the way back to this point regarding Bitcoin. If Bitcoin prevents you from living that kind of life, then you're doing it too hard. I'm sorry if this upsets some of the really super, super Bitcoin maxis out there. And I do consider myself a Bitcoin maximalist. But if it's to the point where you're living a miserable life, then I think that that's wrong. Why can't you do both? Why can't you stack and make sure that your no's are really, truly your no's? And that you're not saying no, but you really want to say yes. I think that's living a false life. I think that's living, I think that's living fake. And I think that the freer, more independent person is more powerful, and that more powerful person naturally finds more ways to stack more Bitcoin anyway. And so I'm never one of these people that say, you know, sell all your chairs, so don't live like a hermit, live like a bum. I'm just not like that. I'm not wired that way. I don't want my kids being that way. I don't want anybody I care about being that way. And because you're here, I don't want you that way either. We can do both. And I will tell you this, if Bitcoin is going to do what I believe it's going to do, in truth, you don't really need an enormous amount to change your life. The most important thing is to hold on. The most important thing is not to trade out of freedom and go back to slavery. That is more important than the quantity you have, because if you have too much of a quantity that makes you susceptible to get rid of your freedom, then to me, that's a mistake. So there's this old saying that I hate to give this guy credit for it, but I have to give credit where credit is due. Warren Buffett said, sell down to the sleeping point. I think it was him. Sometimes you've got to sell down to the sleeping point and keep it there and then never sell again, right? But you should sleep at night. I'm not saying that you shouldn't make sacrifices, but most people today don't have to make sacrifices. There are so many people that come to me and say, but Oliver, I don't have the financial wherewithal to get Bitcoin. Bullshit. Bullshit. If you're talking to me, you have the financial wherewithal to do it. If you're on X.com, you have the financial wherewithal to do it. Don't give me that nonsense, because you can do $2, you can do $5, you can do $10. You do it where you are, and that's the beauty of that's the beauty of Bitcoin. That there is not a single human being on earth that is iced out of this. So I don't buy it. What's a Satoshi? A fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny. There's 3 freaking zeros after the decimal point in a single Satoshi, and you can't do it? I don't buy that. Deliver some value to somebody. Find some, become useful. Be valuable to someone with Bitcoin, and you'll get Bitcoin. I'm not saying you might not have the ability to take actual money, but you can do something. You can fix somebody's car. You can mow somebody's lawn. You can help somebody clean out their garage. You can take someone to the airport that doesn't have transportation. You can do something to get Bitcoin. And I just don't buy it. I don't buy those excuses, because a Satoshi is 0.00042 something today. And I just don't buy it. Everyone can participate. You just gotta, Bitcoin will meet you where you are. Anyway, I promised I wouldn't go off on the deep end with that. And I actually did, so I apologize about that. But Carlos says, can you go more deeply about your tweet from today at 9:15 a.m.? I don't even know what that one was, man. Let me see. 9:15 today. What was my tweet today at 9:15 here? Let me see here. This was one day ago, so that's not it. I don't know if it's the one about BlackRock is the world's ETF king. No surprise here, and guess what? They haven't even warmed up yet. I don't know if that's the one. If you can give me just a little bit. More flesh on that, I'd be glad to talk about it. How do you, Jason B is asking, how do you feel about borrowing slave dollars and using future slave dollars to pay off over time to stack Bitcoin now, given where we are in the cycle? I have many of my traders have actually done that. And I do consider them a bit more sophisticated than most of your average people on the street. And so for them, I felt it was very, very useful. In fact, we pulled the trigger on doing exactly that around the $16,000 area. And the reason why we chose that time frame is because Bitcoin has an historical, Bitcoin is an 80 vol asset. So basically, let's just round it and say Bitcoin drops 80 to 85% during each one of its bear markets. But at the time we pulled the trigger, Bitcoin was down about maybe 76, 77, 78%. So you never try to hit it on the nail, right? And so we said, listen, there's only X number of percentage more to the downside potential if history is going to repeat itself. But what we also realize is that every single cycle, that pullback actually inches up. So the first one was 95%, and then, then you went to 90%, then you went to 85%, then you went to 78%, and maybe the next one's going to be 74%, 72%, and then you wind up in the 60s, and then you wind up in the 50s, and then you wind up in the 40s, and you wind up in the 30s. And so we know this historical pattern. And so when Bitcoin was down about 75, 76%, that's when we started to pull the trigger on what we call in my industry shorting dollars. So when you take a loan out, what you're essentially doing is you're going short the US dollar. Now, if you take a loan out to buy Bitcoin, you're going short US dollars and long Bitcoin. This is essentially what Michael Saylor is doing with another form of money. He's going short another form of fiat currency, which is his own publicly traded stock. So when his stock gets overbought, trades at a premium to the value of the company, he shorts his own shares, which basically means he sells his own shares. And he sells his own shares, he shorts his own shares to buy Bitcoin. And what typically happens when you get this right is that the selling of the shares comes in, so your short makes money, and Bitcoin's rise in value makes money. So you arbitrage that gap between the premium and the undersold Bitcoin and the oversold currency. And so at 16,000, that's exactly what we had. We had an oversold real asset Bitcoin and an overbought fiat currency. So the fiat currency was trading relative to Bitcoin way past where it should trade. And this is the same thing that Michael Saylor's doing. So as a general view, that is an extraordinarily successful strategy. You have to be a little more sophisticated, because if you start borrowing when that gap is not there. So let's say, for instance, the people who borrowed money at 69,000, when Bitcoin flipped that scenario, where now Bitcoin's trading at a huge premium to the value of the US dollar, you've got it backwards. And so let me just give you some guidelines on this. The very best time to borrow money is in a bear market. Most people think that the best time to borrow money is when things are good and the value of your Bitcoin is high. Wrong. The time to do it is when the value of your Bitcoin drops huge, so that you can now, the value of the Bitcoin can swing the other way and your short can swing the other way. Because remember, when you're taking out a loan, you are literally going short the US dollar. And so I'm constantly monitoring what my traders do on this front. No borrowing, no leverage whatsoever at a certain percentage of Bitcoin above its 200 period weekly moving average. When it gets closer to that 200 period weekly moving average and preferably below it, that's the very best time to borrow. Now, if you can't wait for that, the general guideline is, especially if you're going to use Bitcoin as leverage for this borrowed money, you want to stay around 15% or under loan to loan LTV, loan to value. So if Bitcoin's an 85, if Bitcoin's an 80 vol asset, you're really taking out a loan as if you're not going to be liquidated unless Bitcoin drops 85%. All right. And what I would also say is that always don't borrow to maximum, so that if you're even remotely close, you have some extra funds on the side to put up so that you don't get liquidated. But if you just have a loan scenario that's not tied to any type of Bitcoin liquidation, and you can just take out a loan that has nothing to do with Bitcoin and just get a regular payment schedule that you're just going to pay off like a freaking credit card. Well, of course, because if let's say you're going to take out a loan for 14% and Bitcoin has an annualized CAGR of 213% or 150%. I mean, come on. Now, how can that lose, right? But the thing that I would encourage you to understand is that every time you take out a loan, you are shorting the US dollar. And this is why real estate has worked in the past, because real estate is literally a short on the US dollar and a long on a hard asset. And if you think of all the wealth in the world, it's almost all of it's predicated on debt, because the wealthy understand I have to use debt. Otherwise, I'm long currencies and currencies lose value. So debt is the way I short currencies to get hard assets. And so I am in favor of loans responsibly done, shorting fiat currency to buy the hardest asset in the world. All right, guys, I didn't want to make this long, but we can do this a lot more frequently. And I just want to quickly see how many people I have here. And oh, 20, we got a pretty decent crowd here. I appreciate that. So maybe we'll do this a little bit more frequently, because this is a good time for me too. Sometimes during the day I can't do it as frequently as I would like. But love taking your questions, guys. Love you guys showing up. I appreciate everything. I just want you to remember, guys, I don't ever ask you for anything. All right. Ask if there's someone asking you for something, and it looks like it's me, it's not me. There's a lot of fake accounts out here. I will never ask you for anything. I will never ask you to give $1. I will never ask you to send Bitcoin anywhere. I don't do this for that. All right. I don't do this for that. I do this because, well, I don't know why I do it. I'm just crazy. I don't know why. But I do it because I just can't keep this to myself. Like, if I see the exit sign, if we're all slaves and I see a way to escape, how do I just keep that to myself? I don't know how to do that. I'm just not wired that way. All right. I can't do it forever, but I do it, and it does give me a certain amount of joy. It does. So anyway, I appreciate all of you joining in live, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening, your morning, wherever you are in the world. Go to work. You know what to do. Let's stack harder. Let's not stop. Let's not get fooled by this short-term interim pause that Bitcoin has. These are all healthy things. Every runner needs a pause. Otherwise, he's going to freaking collapse at some point. We don't want that for Bitcoin. If there is no pause, if there's no pullback, if there's no 20, 30% pullbacks along the way to its blast off, along its path to blast off, if you don't get those, then you truly do get tulips. You truly do get a bubble. And the price to pay for not having those pauses in between is a price we don't want to have to pay. It's ugly, it's nasty. And if you think Bitcoin's 80, 75% pullbacks are bad, then let a run happen without a 20 or 30% pause along the way, or several along the way. These are all healthy things, right? So don't get fooled by that. Use them, and I'll see you on the other side, guys. Ciao for now. Boo.